All right, a friend needed some help with edges on big cubes, so I'm going to try to make this simpler than my other video. So here's a 7 by 7, which is considered an odd numbered cube, and this is a 6 by 6, which is an even numbered cube. So things that apply to this are like for the 4 by 4, the 6 by 6, the 8 by 8, etc. This is like the 5 by 5, 7 by 7, 9 by 9, etc. The difference is on odd numbered cubes, the very, very, very centers are fixed. And on even cubes, there is no fixed center. Now, that's important the way I do edges only for the last 4 edges. But because of that, I'm going to do them exactly the same on either odd or even. And so I'm going to just put aside this even for right now and show you what my process is using this odd one. So at this point, what we have is we have all of the big, I'm going to call them big centers as opposed to the tiny little centers, all of the big centers on each side done. I also have some complete edges. And remember, when we talk about complete edges, we don't talk about the corners. So ignore those. So these, for a 5 by 5, I'm sorry, a 7 by 7, there's 5 little cubies, I believe they're called, which make up an edge. So that edge is solved. That edge is solved. That edge is solved. That's not. That's not. That's not. That's not. That's not. And on the bottom, that is, that's not, and that's not. So what I do is I solve facing me, and then as I solve an entire edge, I move it to the top. If the top is already full, which I'll show you in a minute, I just turn the cube over and move to the top, which is now the top. And so once I have 8 done, so all 4 on top done and all 4 on the bottom done, then I move to doing the 4 on the sides, and their technique is a little bit different. So we'll start with a few of these that are going to go on the top or on the bottom. All right, what I like to do is first of all, I always work on something that's over here, and if I can, find some that are already done with a couple, and then I always try to find other pieces and bring them over here. I always start looking for things in this center band before I look for anything on top or bottom. So for example, I have decided that I want to start with these 2 red and blues because they're already together. So I want to look for other red and blue pieces. Here's one, but obviously it's oriented incorrectly. So I'm just going to move it for right now over to the right because this is sort of my working area. So I'm going to look around the band again and see if I see any other red and blues. All right, here's a red and blue. So I want to move that around to where I can see these are my original pieces. And this one happens to be oriented correctly so that if I keep moving it, then those have lined up. So that's great. Now this one is still wrong. We can't just move it over because it would be oriented wrong. So we'll deal with that in a minute. Let's look again around the edge and see, or the center, this band, see if we can see any other blue and reds. Ah, there's a blue and red up there. So if I move it to be with these others, well, actually, I'm sorry, I can just move it to here, and we now actually have 4. So that's ideal. So we've only got 1 left, and it's over here. I like to work on it here, so I'm going to move this one out of the way just temporarily. So I'm just going to move this one over, because I know it's oriented wrong. I can't just move it over to line it up. So I have to do the flippy move. So I put it over here, do the flippy move. And I see this video is already going to be too long. And so now it's flipped it, so it's down here. I can just move it over and it's lined up. And now I can put this one back to where it was. And so I've now solved an entire edge without having to go to the top or bottom. But after we solve one, what we want to do is we want to put it on the top or the bottom until we have 4 solved on the top and 4 on the bottom. So all 4 of these are already solved. So we're going to turn this over completely and find one that isn't. And so what we can do is move this up to here, to the top, rotate a U, and you might have to rotate it any number of times, but until there's an unsolved edge here, and then move this side back down. So this way you haven't disturbed your centers. These 2 bands still go with these 2 bands, and you've brought an unsolved edge down here. Now that hasn't affected the bottom either. We still have our 4, and up here we have 2 that are solved. All right, this is the first case that when they're on top. Let's suppose we're working on the orange and white. All of these are together. We just need to find the one other white and orange piece, which happens to be here. So we look, what color's facing us? It's white. What color's on top? It's white. So we know it's the same color. So in this case, we're going to move the front face. For case 2, we'll be moving the right side. But so for this case, where the color on top matches the color that's facing us, what we're going to do is we're going to be moving this F face. So we do not want, at first, for this to be set up, we do not want this on the front face. Because see, if we move the front face, it moves that. So we just have to position it anywhere else on top. So it could be over here, it could be back here, or it could be here. It doesn't matter as long as it's not here. So when you find it, I mean, it could be here, could be there, could be there, could be here, could be anywhere. In this particular case, it was there. So we just need to move it out of the way. So since they match, we're moving the F face. So we're doing an F prime, because what we're doing is we're bringing this right edge up to get it. Now we're moving it over to here, wherever it is. So since it was right here, it's just going to be a U. If we had moved it back to here, it would be a U too. If we had moved it to there, it'd be the other way. Just intuitively think about you just moving it so it's on top of this edge we just brought up. And now we do an F to undo the F prime we started with. And that has brought it down to this edge, which is where we're looking for it, and it's oriented correctly, so now we can just move it over. So really, it's really that simple. All right, here is the second case. I'm working on these reds and whites. So we've got these 3 and this one together. So again, just a recap, what I first do is look for the other red and white on this center band, and I don't see it. So I position this again at the front left, and I look for the red and white on the top. So it's not there. It's not there. There it is. So this is the piece that I want here. But remember, the way we do it is I always bring the piece I'm moving down to here and then slide it over. And I want it oriented correctly, so I can just do a simple slide. So what we did before is when we saw whatever color was facing us over here, if the color up here was the same, then we moved the face like I've already shown. But if the color is the opposite color, so here white is showing us, let's just get this green and red one out of the way so it doesn't confuse us. These red and whites, the white is facing us. So this red and white up here, what's on top is the opposite of that. So this is where it's case 2. So what we do, and it doesn't matter if it's there or there or there or there, the idea is the same. We are going to bring this side, because this is where we want it, we're going to bring this side up by doing an R, and we're going to move it over to be there and bring this back down. So clearly, if it's back here, we can bring this up without disturbing it. And then when we would rotate it over and bring it down, it would be fine. If, on the other hand, it's over here, same thing, that's fine. We can bring the right up, move this over, in this case a U2, so it's over here, and then move this back down. So that's easy enough. Or if it's here, same thing, we can move this right up, won't affect that, move it over and move it back down. The only slightly tricky instance is if the piece we want, again, red and white, happens to already be in the right slice, because we know we're going to move this up to get it. So if we move that up, we've moved this out of the way. So if the piece we're trying to get when these colors are opposite is right here, we just have to move it out of the way. So we can either move it here or here or here. Doesn't matter, just as long as it's not here. So once it's out of the way, we do an R, and then we move it over. So a U prime, or depending on where you have it. I mean, if you had it over here, it'd be a U2. Basically, just move it over to here, then move this R back, so R prime. So that has taken it from up here, put it on this right side, which is what we want, and it's oriented correctly. So I can just move it over, and it lines up with these guys. And then, as usual, I put this up on the top and then go about solving more edges that are not solved. After you've looked for all of your, just to recap then, after you've looked for all of your edges on this center band and done those, then look for them on the top. And if you find ones where the color here that's facing you matches the color that's on top of that piece, that's the color that's on top, then you do case number 1, which is getting it out of the way so when you move an F prime, you can then, wherever it is, move it over. I'm not doing a real case here, so, and then do an F to put it back, and then it'll be here and it'll be oriented correctly. You can slide it over. The second case is whatever you're working on over here. If the color that's facing you is the opposite of the piece's color up here that faces up, then you're going to be moving the right side. So if it's already in this position, you have to move it temporarily. So you can move it to here or to here or to here. Once you've done that, you do an R to move this edge up because that's where you want it to be. And then you move it over to there. So if it's here, you move a U. If it's over here, you do a U2, etc. Wherever it is, you move it to here. Then you undo that R that you did with an R prime, and that will have brought it down to here, perfectly aligned to slide it over. And so it's really pretty simple. Enjoy. And I can't remember if you had problems with the final 4, but since this is already long, I'll stop here right now and then make another one if you need more for the last 4.